Sometimes we might have someone in our life that, tells us we're not smart, or tells us we're not enough, or that we're not thin enough, or smart enough, or pretty enough, or whatever it may be. And those are all just wrong. Sorry, you need to realize that, I think I go back to what I said earlier, like, who's in charge? Like, you're in charge of your next step.
Hey everybody, I'm Laura Schulweiss.
And I'm Jen Giammo.
And welcome to another episode of Everybody Talks, the podcast where we explore the wide world of wellness. Sometimes we talk to experts, sometimes we talk to each other, but we're always talking to you.
Every week we discuss topics from nutrition and exercise to mindfulness and self-care. And today we are talking to a thought leader and entrepreneur with more than 20 years of experience as an executive in business, healthcare, and education. She's the founder of her own company, Bold Industries Group, BIG, a consulting, coaching, and curated event company dedicated to helping professionals and organizations make transformative changes.
Her new book is called Be Bold Today, Unleash Your Potential, Master Your Mindset, and Achieve Success. And she's here to tell us all about it on Everybody Talks. Please welcome Leigh Burgess.
Thank you very much. I'm excited.
Welcome. We're excited to have you.
Yes.
So just, we've got two dogs here. So just another reminder that if we are...
I love that.
If we're looking around...
It's stressing her out.
It's stressing me out just a little bit.
I'm excited they're there. Yeah, I think they add a lot.
So all right. Well, we're feeling good energy from them, I think.
Yeah, so definitely.
Why don't you clarify by telling us about yourself, how you came to this point, and why you're telling people to be more bold?
Right. Yeah. So I did not walk around and say, hey, I'm a bold person. It wasn't anything like that. So I got to a point in 2020 after a long career in corporate, and it was the beginning of the pandemic, and I just was burnout. I think everything that, during the pandemic, if it was good, it made it really, even better, and if something wasn't going well, it really exacerbated that it wasn't going well. So I was just working in a way that wasn't healthy on pretty much all levels. I tried to do the normal thing of, look for a job, apply, those types of things. It wasn't happening. And I just had to get to this point where I had to choose me. And it wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't a decision that wasn't full of fear at certain times, but there was this sense of freedom. Like, if I make a change, I know I can live a better life. I can be healthier on so many levels. So I ended up quitting my job without having a plan, which is not like me. But I knew I needed to prioritize my health. And from there, really just fueled initially by a lot of belief that I could do it, I started to create my company and create our offerings, and also to get healthier. So for me, it was just, I think I waited too long to be bold, to choose me and to have that belief. And from that, for me, I needed a guide. I needed something to follow. And I actually created the BOLD framework, Believe, Own, Learn, Design, which is what I use to figure out my what's next.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Like, that is such a bold thing to do, to leave a career and not have a plan. I'm a very
A through
anxious.
double Z. Yeah.
I mean,
And I am not.
And she's not.
I am not.
But I like what you said. Like, you had the belief. Like, I think that's where it starts, right? It's like, if you have the belief, that breeds the confidence, right? And then
it's the foundation for everything.
It's the foundation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So that's. I like that. And obviously it's working out well for you.
I know.
Yeah, it's not all butterflies and rainbows, I think there's a lot of things on social media that every day is like a perfect day and those types of things, but we have had incredible success, and it's working out. What was really, really special was that I co-founded the company with my daughter, and she is 25 years younger than me. So really having that, and when I say co-founder, I mean all in investor, all of the things that you need to do, for several months, we didn't have a paycheck, all that. And really being able to do this with her has been incredible. And she was also a big part of writing the book and kind of being the voice to really say, kind of really is this you? Is this, could you add a different example? Those types of things. So it's really been great to have the experience with her too.
Yeah. Do you think that was helpful also, just in the fact that I just think of younger people as being a little bit more fearless than we tend to be? Was that was that helpful to you to have her as a partner to kind of, push you along, or was it very much more of a collaboration?
Yeah, it's definitely collaboration, and I actually think my life has fear in it for sure. Like, I don't have fearlessness. Like, my definition of bold, which is something I ask everyone on my podcast, is, really stepping through the fear, moving forward, even though, you're not sure how it's going to work out, and still taking the step. So I think for me, working with her was just, I think, an elevation of actually communication. I'm a very big thinker and
Right.
visionary type of person. She is details to the max, which every visionary person needs someone who's detail oriented.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was an incredible thing. And plus she had a perception and also an experience as a different generation, which also, as we create kind of offerings, we want to be able to make sure that, people can learn to be bolder sooner, in their lives. And really, what I mean by that is really to be okay being themselves, being authentic, being them, and not comparing themselves to other people.
How
Yeah.
great for her also at a much younger age to kind of get this input and kind of do these things and to go forward. Like, I wish I knew the things that I know now when I was, I mean, look, everybody,
Right?
you go through
Mhm.
all the periods of your life and you think what you think, but how
Yeah.
nice to have like that road to start on much earlier, you know?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
just kinda, I think I was really bold, but not, I didn't even know that word or talk about that word. I can't run away from the word now, but I think when I was younger, like, I really felt like it was there. And something, even like some of the, the marketing campaigns you've seen, like Dove, like Run Like a Girl, those sort of
Yeah,
things.
sure.
Something happened in my late 20s to 30s where I just started to, I think, assimilate more and kind of step back, and kind of in the corporate setting, they don't want 100% of you all the time. And, I think by 40, I had diluted who I was. And so what I really wanted to do was make sure that, I just want women and young girls to know that they can be themselves all the time, meaning earlier in their life, and they don't have to be somebody else to seek approval or to be enough. They were born enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that. So you say, and I kind of quoted you here, that being bold isn't about being loud or fearless, but it's about making calculated, thoughtful, and pragmatic decisions aligned with our true purpose and values.
Mhm.
Can you dig into that a little bit more for us?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think bold is on a continuum. So, like, obviously, my bold moment when I left was big, meaning it was seen, everyone saw it, those type of things. Sometimes people post things on social media. I think some of my boldest moments were the quietest moments, meaning they're between my ears, they're how I talk to myself, they're what I, take as my next step. Because I think what's very interesting about the continuum of boldness, that it is personal, like it is your personal definition, and it might change and should change as you evolve in your life. So it's not a one time, I defined it and that's what it is. So I think for me, that's why I think it's important for people to realize that it doesn't have to be something splashy or big or bold. I think it's one of the myths of being bold that I talk about in the book, as well. So I think just realizing that sometimes taking a bold step is just really getting curious and starting to write down your plan. It could be, again, like, how are you really seeing yourself and your self talk? For me, I realized some things, like, I had, for the first time, I had imposter syndrome, which I had not ever experienced in the corporate world. But as an entrepreneur, I was like, whoa, like, I never planned on this because of what's happened. Do I belong here? And then we had such incredible success out of the gate. I think as an entrepreneur, sometimes you just feel like you don't know what you're doing like 90% of the time.
Totally. That's
Everything's
how
like
we
an
that's how we go through this
experiment.
podcast every day, by the way.
Well, she does. She does. One of us plans a little
One
bit
of us
more.
plans and one of us doesn't.
I love it. I love
You
it.
can
Yeah,
guess
the
which
yin and
one.
the yang. Yeah, for
Yeah.
Definitely.
sure.
That's what we
Yeah.
are for sure.
So you work with entrepreneurs, you work with executives. Like, what's your typical clientele?
Yeah, so, most of them are women.
Mhm.
So, and ages 35 to 55 kind of is the sweet spot. And really, they could be in any type of transition. So they could be, wanting to move up in their company. They could be wanting to get on a board. They could be wanting to create their legacy and, stop working at their company. Several people have started a side hustle, and some have, like, quit and started their own business. And some of them just want to elevate. They don't want to change or, change jobs or anything like that, but they want to just get to know themselves better and maybe do a reset of their thinking. And so I think it's just really nice to see across the industries, the people that we work with, and then also just being able to begin to think about other things that we can do for other generations. So, but that's
Yeah.
kind of the sweet spot right
Wow.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the myths of being bold. Can you share a little bit more about that? What are people thinking when they hear that word or when they
Yeah.
see your book? What is it that comes to mind usually?
Yeah, well, bold, I mean, again, like the definition is personal. And I think the one thing that all of the definitions that I've collected have in common is that it's a choice. I can't make you be bold. I can't, define bold for you. I can't be able to, make you take the step. So I think it's personal. I think one of the myths of being bold is that it's too late to be bold, right? It's too late to make a change. Like, look at me. I did that at 48. I quit my job without having a job. And I think for me, that just seemed like an incredible risk. It felt selfish at times because, I just want to provide for my family and be able to do the things that are so important for us. But I also realized that my health is just as important. And I had really let that tank on every level. So for me, that was, if you could easily say, like, you're almost 50, Leigh, like, why don't you stay and, just hammer it out? But it just wasn't an option. So I think too late to be bold, that it always has to be big, like we just talked about. I think the other thing is that, people think that when you're being bold, that you have no self doubt, that you're always confident. And that is just not the case. For me, like fear and freedom are kind of like the partner along this journey. And they're usually always there, like a feeling of I can do it and I can create it, which I love. But there's also the sense that it might not work out or might not be received. And then just realizing with your growth mindset that it's going to be okay. You're going to figure it out. And even if it doesn't work out, you will be able to take your next step with some more data potentially about how to do it.
Yeah.
So I think those are some biggies.
So there's like this continuum of bold, so to
Hmm.
speak. And so how do you know what your, for lack of a better word, like your bold type is? Like, is there a way you can kind of understand? Like when I hear that word and I think about it, I think of like assertive and I think of
Yeah.
aggressive and those types
Yeah.
of things,
It's got
things
some
that
bad rap to it.
a
Yeah,
little
for
bit
Yeah.
sure.
like it's,
No,
it's,
yeah,
Definitely.
no, it's real. Yeah. No, it's
but
real.
yeah, but at the same time, I also feel like there's a confidence vibe to it too.
Yeah.
Um,
I think I see it everywhere, but I'm looking for it. I see the
right.
word everywhere.
Sure.
Everything was bold. Even my
Right.
cranberry juice is bold right now.
So true.
It was like same bold flavor. So I think, it is personal, but it does have some more, I think, stronger definitions. But what I did in the book was actually we took all the definitions that we had from the podcast of how our guests have defined being bold. And then we kind of scrambled them into personas or bold personas. So there's actually a quiz in the book that if you take the quiz, then you'll kind of know what your persona is. You might be a little bit of one and another. So sometimes it's not just 100% one. But for example, like mine is brave warrior. So and it kind of goes back to my definition, and it's really connected to courage and fear. And like even though you feel the fear, you do it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. We
And do you
take the
help people
quiz.
with that? Because I feel like there's a lot of self doubt. I think, we all have it. And like you
Yeah.
said,
Oh
imposter
yeah.
syndrome is real and all of that.
I have like the trifecta. So like I now know that I have a little bit of imposter syndrome. I have people pleasing tendency, which I did not know, but a lot of other people seem to know. And then I have perfectionism. So like it's like the trifecta of, and again, it's self awareness and knowledge of just
Right.
what do I need to do or rewire with my thinking? And because I think all those things are something you can overcome, but being aware of them is really really important, and why they're there. So I think that, yeah, so when you think of your fears, I think one of the things, if you think about the framework, beliefs, is one. You start with that, your ownership. And sometimes we're owning fears that maybe someone else's. My easiest and simplest example is like my mom is afraid of tunnels, doesn't like to be in tunnels. And I remember just as a child, we would take a long way around and there'd be a lot of stress if we had to go through one. And so for some reason, I was afraid of tunnels. And now living on the East Coast, like you better get over tunnels. So, Boston, like, you're constantly in one. So I think I realized, and this is just an example, that that wasn't my fear. That was actually my mom's fear that she didn't mean to give me, but I, caught it in a way. And so when you think about whether it's fear of changing a job or fear of maybe stepping out and saying what you really want, or maybe not doing something that someone expected, and not out of defiance or anything like that, but it just isn't aligned with who you are and what you want to be. Those are all bold moments that, I think define us and also create a space or place for us to figure out what's next, because life is messy. I mean, to be honest, like, it's just, that's kind of how we learn and where we're going to grow. And it's probably in the messiness. And I think just I just celebrated my birthday. So being 53, I think for me, it's like, I'm really obsessed right now with the word becoming. Like, who am I becoming? How am I using all this stuff that I've been through in my life for good? And so, really, I think as people take their bold steps, I try to just help them understand kind of where their fears come from and just the tremendous opportunity they have just to take the first step. And they don't have to take all 50, they just need to take the next one.
Because I also think, like, it's especially as women, like, you really like change course. Like at a certain age, you realize, like, wait a minute, I have this whole other chapter of my life, to live. And what does that entail? That doesn't have to do with necessarily husband, children, job, like other things that you want. Because you kind of, for better or worse, know, like, you're rounding the bend. And so you want to be like, hey, wait a minute. Like, what do I want to do with this time? I mean, I know that's the way I feel,
Yeah. Well,
for
you
sure.
start to, well, feels like time goes really fast. I'll
It
tell
does,
you
definitely
that.
does, definitely
It's like
does,
the
definitely
clock is
does.
going like this
Yes.
For
on
sure.
speed.
Yes.
But I think the other thing is you realize, like, I think, again, it underscores, why are you here? What is your purpose? What's your passion? And life's too short to mess around. Like, I think I realized that really early on in my life because I lost my brother who was 11 and I was 6. And so I knew, like, it didn't matter how old you were, you could go away. And so for me, I think I've been a little bit YOLO probably all of my life, but I think it was really inspiring for me to see how my mom let me be me, let me play on the boys soccer team, like, let me do some things that, dangerous, like, she let me be me, even though I think after losing a child, she could have easily have, like, just contained and, like, made sure, like, I just sat on the couch. So I think, being bold at this age, I think it's also, I feel a responsibility too, to hopefully share the journey and the imperfections in it so people realize that they can do it. And I think that's the first time I realized that my story was important, was when I did a talk and someone actually said I inspired them. And I
Yeah.
really felt like a responsibility then to,
Hmm.
like, okay, well, I need to
Yeah.
share more of the story. And so people can see that it's okay to take the step. It's okay to have something not work out. It's okay to bet on yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
And to
Right.
recognize that fear,
Sure.
it's like, I think sometimes, I know for me, it's like, sometimes I don't even know why I'm not doing something. And then I'm like, oh, what am I afraid of? Why am I
Hmm.
afraid of this?
Hmm.
So it's kind of like recognizing that, identifying it, and then doing it anyway, like you
Right.
Yeah.
said,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
And taking agency in your life, I think every bold step leads to greater confidence, leads to more agency, where you feel like you're more in control of, your next step. And that, I think that's really, really important, because I think for a long time I was thinking that it was the world's job to understand me, when really it was my job to understand me and then figure out how to navigate the world. And that came in my late 40s. So I would get upset if someone didn't see or didn't recognize or couldn't understand. And, like, people don't read your mind. And really, the only person that you can hold accountable is you. You can invite others, but I think that's just an important piece to the learning and the becoming for me as well, of just understanding who I am and how I'm operating.
Sure, sure. That's
Oh
where
my
it
God.
starts, right? I mean,
100%.
that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
so. Talk to us a little bit about, you outlined this framework, these 4 steps in the bold framework. Can you tell us a little bit about each one of those?
Sure. Yeah. So in the book, it'll walk you through each one of the quadrants: believe, own, learn, design. We spend a lot of time in belief, because I think it's really important, and it's, the like we said, the foundation for everything. that you really will pivot off of or move off of. And really just, starting with even something simply as an I am statement and being able to do an activity around that. And like if you had 5 minutes, you just sit down and write, I am, what are all the things that you would say about yourself? And then really looking at those and understanding kind of, are they true or are they not true? Doing a belief audit, in the sense of kind of, do I have some things in mind for myself of what I want to do, but they might have conflict or belief conflict with even how I was raised or what was expected of me. And then, doing some simple things like just understanding kind of what you feel your purpose is and what you want to be doing, what brings you joy, and can you align those, right? With our
Yeah.
work, with what we do in the world, can we kind of align it? And then you move into ownership of owning kind of, your successes and your failures, and also realizing owning your next step. For me, an example was I owned everything that went wrong, but I never was owning the things that went right. I was like the fixer. I was the one to make things better, but I very, very rarely would stop and even acknowledge the things that went well. And so, and I don't know really where that comes from yet. Maybe some more therapy. I'll let you know where that one
Oh
comes
my
from. But
God.
I think for me, it was like I like appreciation, but I don't like attention. And so I think, some of those may have been, just attention moments. But I think just getting better at owning the good things as well as owning the things that are yours, but letting go of what's not. And I think that's where a lot of my burnout came from too. I think I was owning things that no one ever asked me to own, but I took them on anyway because I, wanted to keep them safe or make sure they moved along. And then learning, which is just one of my favorite pieces and parts of living, is just being able to take the things that you've gone through or that you've learned or things that didn't work out or moments you didn't respond like you wish you had, and really using those and applying those to how you're going to design your next level life, like the next level to you. And that's up to you. And I think it's just important for people to realize that the framework is there. It's not a one and done, just like the definition isn't. You may need to go back and, brush off the belief chapter when you're kind of in a moment of like, should I consider this job, or should I have the conversation about our relationship that isn't advancing or working or doesn't feel right? Those are moments of boldness, just like anything else. So you might want to come back to the framework and kind of just get refreshed in one section or another. But by the end of the book, you've actually designed your bold blueprint for your year and really do it on your terms and go, take your time through the activities.
Yeah.
Sure. I want to go back to what you were saying about like how you don't take successes, and
Mhm.
like I know like when I do something wrong, or I do something that is a total misstep, you get mired in regret and like bad feelings, which I think
Yeah,
is
right. You're like,
like you have to like let those go, and that's so hard to do. I mean, it's hard for me to do. I feel
Mhm.
like like
yeah, you're like,
I'll
why couldn't I fix it? Or why couldn't I
yeah,
make that,
like
And
yeah, or like why did I say that instead of this? Why did I do that instead of this? And you get kind of like bogged down in that instead of just like going forward and moving like, okay, that happened, but then maybe something good came out of this other thing that happened.
Right. Yeah. And worst case scenario, you've learned something about yourself. Like, wow, for me, like, oh, I reacted there when I should have just kind of been more quiet. Or I know you were excited, but listen more. Like those are moments where I'm just like, and then there's things that don't work out. And I think you can overly be responsible, be overly responsible, have this mantle of responsibility that's really heavy to carry. And so I think for me, realizing that I didn't own everything and that people do want to help you. People do want to support you. And sometimes I think as women, we think we have to do it all or we think we have to do it solo. That's another myth of being bold, is that bold is a solo act. And you have to take the action, but there is definitely your group, your people, they're out there that want you to succeed, and they're going to cheer you, champion you, and they're going to challenge you too. They're going to ask questions, not in a way that's negative, but in a way that can be growth evoking for you in your next steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, Lee, it's like when you have those things, I'm a ruminator and
Mm.
I should have done this. Why didn't I do that? So
Yeah.
it's difficult, I think, for maybe a lot of people to learn from those mistakes and do it differently the next time. Like that's where I feel like I get stuck a lot because I'm constantly ruminating in like, well, that didn't work and why didn't it work? And instead of like figuring out how do I do it differently next time, I'm still ruminating on what I did wrong, you know?
Yeah.
So to
Yeah.
be able to use those as learnings and change your approach for the next time, I think it's hard. I think
It's hard. It's hard to let go of being a part of the woulda, coulda, shoulda club.
Yeah, we have like this yeah, we have these lists of what ifs and we have this, the woulda, shoulda, coulda. But ultimately, we have to realize, and I certainly came to this using the framework and kind of after quitting my job, but you have to just keep moving forward. And the more you do that, and I'm getting better at it, I am not perfect at it, but just being able to kind of advance or pivot quicker when those moments come up. It doesn't mean they go away. It doesn't mean you don't perseverate on something that longer than you should have. But I think maybe that time, the recall time or the ability to kind of, get back to the next step maybe becomes shorter for you. And then it becomes, something that just pretty quickly you kind of go through and it isn't something that holds you back. Sometimes that's where our beliefs are really, really important because they can really be that extra oomph to get us out of that rumination or kind of just thinking about something over and over.
Yeah.
How would you differentiate feeling like a momentary feeling of stuck with that you're really burned out? Like, how do you know kind of the difference between those two? Like, we're like, I'm like, okay, I'm done with my job. I'm done with this person. I'm done with, like with just a momentary speed bump in what you're feeling, like to move on from that. Like, how would you differentiate that?
Yeah, for me, the burnout probably started in, I want to say, probably 45. So my guess is I kind of let it go 3 years too long. And it's got to that point where I had to make such a drastic decision. But for me, I started operating outside of my values and I wasn't aligned with what I, prioritized and what was important. So for me, my family, my relationships, and my health are part of my values that are very, very important. But I had just backburnered all of that. I was working 17 hours a day. I was sleeping maybe 2 hours and then whatever you do in between, shower and eat.
Oh,
And I
Wow.
barely got outside. So like it was just, I mean, obviously, just even saying that out loud, like, that's not good. But for me, it was like, I'll keep working harder, taking on more responsibility, and that will fix it. And that had worked in the past, but then it wasn't working, but I kept doing it anyway. So that's why I think it got to such a dire point for me that I had no other choice. And really, there was no way for me to get better and kind of heal than to do what I did. And it was very, very scary. I mean, it was a short runway. We had savings and a little bit of retirement that we could use. And that's what we did. And so, but really fueled by belief that we can figure it out and that there's always options that you can take. But I think, feeling like you're always the one that's responsible for everything that goes wrong, if you're feeling that, I think, definitely checking out the ownership chapter, you'll go through some activities and then it'll help you really dissect kind of, do I own a piece or part of that? Do I own the whole thing? Or is it really not mine to own, but I've taken it on because, I want to people please, or I want people to like me, or I just want to be in control. I think that
Control. I
was
was just
the
gonna
other
say,
thing.
or just
That
be
was
in
mine.
control.
That would be
That would be
That'd
me.
be her.
I need to
Yeah.
control.
like,
So I'll
definitely.
take on all the things because
Exactly,
It's easier.
right?
it's
Yeah.
easier and it's
I'm kind of like that at work, I think, a little bit. too.
I just that's a big one, is that
Yeah.
controlling and
Yeah.
being able to like
Definitely.
Yeah, when you feel that feeling of something's got to give, or I think those are kind of the moments that, okay, let me understand that a little bit more. Is this a one-time thing? Did this, or has this been going on for months? And so I think that's going to help you understand whether it's just kind of a tiny bump in the road or really something you should, dig into.
I sometimes feel like I'm not doing enough. Like I feel like, or like, all right, here's an example. So this week we have a lot of podcasts this week, and I've been doing a lot of like research and writing questions, doing all those things. And I have other work, I have another
Right.
job, I have another,
Day
and I
job.
feel, I feel as though like, and I love doing this, and I actually love everything that I do. I enjoy it. It's not like I don't feel stuck. It's not a negative feeling. It's just that like, when do you know that it's enough? Like last night it was 8:30 and I'm like, oh, I still have this, and this to do. Should I keep going and pushing through, or is that going to burn me out? Like because I enjoy it, I don't see it as, a chore, but I'm physically exhausted. Like I'm getting in bed at 9:00, 9:30, and I'm falling asleep like on a dime. So how do you know like when to push yourself to that point? How do you balance it, I guess is my question.
Yeah. So I think balance is elusive. And I think for a lot of people, they might use that word. I use alignment because I feel like it lasts a little bit longer, but still needs checked in on, right? So it sounds like for me, you love your work, you enjoy what you're doing, and you wouldn't give those things up. But it does sound like maybe some things have either. Maybe gotten more in the sense of number to do, or maybe there's a lot to do in a different period of time or a short period of time. So it might just be a moment in time that's happening. And then, those are the times that you really do just push through and figure it out. And then, getting back and getting realigned is going to be important, right? So, your sleep cycle, I think sleep is one of our superpowers. And just because you've left an organization or left a place because you were burnt out doesn't mean you don't take those habits and tendencies with you to the next one. So even as an entrepreneur, I've experienced like the beginning of it again. I was like, oh, at least I know the signs to look for. So the sleep piece was probably an indicator for me, 2 hours of sleep when I was burnt out. So I think, you're off of your normal cycle, but I think making sure you intentionally take action to just kind of get back to it, whether it's by January 30th or, by a certain time frame. And then because the longer that goes, it'll just, I think, create some, tendencies or new habits that might not be positive ones for your health. In that respect. But, I think we only have so much time. And I think a lot of the times I hear folks say to me, like, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to learn that, or I don't have time to check that out. But I think if you do a time audit on yourself and kind of see where you're spending some time, I mean, like, are you scrolling? Are you watching Beverly Hills Housewives? Like, what are you doing that, some of that you may need, just to kind of decompress. But just thinking about your time and how you're using it and just resetting that
Yeah.
as you need to throughout the year.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
is hard. I mean, even I do feel, and my family said this to me, that you feel like you're on a little bit of a hamster wheel because, like, like what Jen was saying with the podcast. I mean, we each have our responsibilities, what we do, but I have a full-time job that also takes up a great deal of time, and just to keep like you finish one job, you start the next job, then it's like okay, then what else are you doing? Like that, it seems like you're just going from one job back and forth like a ping pong ball, and you're
Yeah.
not sure where, like you said, that balance is for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, who's in charge, right? So I think, figuring that out, like, am I letting someone else's expectations, or, am I putting, like, I would always, like, for a deadline, I would always be so tight and so like early, like, oh, you need it by Friday, I'll get it to you by Wednesday. Or I wouldn't even ask and I would try to get it to them that same day. I mean, I would come to my desk from a meeting when I was at Duke, and I was in a meeting for an hour, and I would say, sorry for my delay. And it's just like, okay, like, it's okay. I was in a meeting. So, like, I think sometimes we over pressurize ourselves. So I think just checking in with yourself of like, do I really have to do it this week? Or could it be next week? Yes, I would like to do it sooner than later, but it's just not possible. So I think I know sometimes I self imposed some of those things that made me feel like I was on a hamster wheel, or I said yes when I should have said no to certain things,
Yeah.
like being on a committee or being the HOA president, which I was for 3 years. Like, that stuff does take time. And so really thinking about, even though those sound like, nice things to do or things that you get to do, just realizing that you may need to say no, and that being bold may actually be doing less than you're doing now, which doesn't
Wow.
compute, for
Sure.
me or probably you either. Like, it's no, I need to max everything out. But if you do that, I think you then end up in a place that, you feel empty or don't have the energy, or it might not feel as joyful doing it as, as it
Sure.
did in the past.
I
Sure.
also think that it's different when you are working for someone that you're, in a job where,
Agreed.
whether you're reporting to
Yes.
somebody or
Yes.
you have colleagues. I think that's so different. I mean, I've done both as well. I've worked for myself for much longer than I was working in a corporate setting, but I think that you do take those things with you and you put that pressure then on yourself. Like, I feel as though if I'm not doing something, multitasking, getting it all done in one day, that like, I'm lazy. What are you doing? Well, what else are you doing? You
I
know?
the other day was like, yeah, I took Saturday off I said that to my husband. I was like, I took Saturday off, and he just like laughed out loud. He's like,
He's like,
you're supposed to take Saturday
Yeah,
off.
exactly. It's the weekend. It's the weekend. You can do that.
totally true.
I felt
Totally
guilty.
true.
You
I
feel
felt
guilty,
guilty.
but I
Yeah.
think too, like
Yeah.
to your point earlier, like as an entrepreneur, it's like you don't know, is it going to work? You don't know if it's
Yeah.
going to work, and you're
Yeah.
constantly like, you don't know where the next job is going to come from. Are you going to have an income? If you're not, to me, this is in my mind, right?
Those
Like
are
this.
things that run through your head. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
like, well, if
Yeah.
I'm not constantly working, then what's going to happen? What if I don't have money coming in? Or what if it's all these fears and these worries. So it's like that pressure that you put on yourself. But I do think, to your point, it's like, if you just, like, you got to take that break. You have to take that moment to relax, whether it's a Saturday or it's a Wednesday or
Right.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because you do come back to it, I think, a little bit more
Definitely.
rejuvenated,
I think
right?
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and understanding the why of what you're doing, right? So again, I think sometimes we put those self-imposed deadlines on ourselves. I think sometimes we may have said yes just to help someone, but now it's a lot and you just can't do it and you're not sure how to maybe back down or back out of the responsibility. That's a bold conversation to have. And, that's very possible. But I think standing in your own value and realizing that what you need and what you want and how you're operating in the world is just as important as anybody else's. I mean, that is something that I'm feeling really good about at 53 that I don't think I did as much as I should have in my late 40s. So I think standing in your value will also help you understand kind of what is the most valuable thing for you to be doing. And I think that also creates the greatest impact and the higher levels of energy for you.
And setting priorities, I think,
I think that's
it goes
true,
kind of
yeah.
along with that, right? It's like, I
Yeah, which is
sometimes
hard.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard.
which is
It's
hard.
really hard.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you prioritizing?
It's-
And for you, I think, recognizing that your health was suffering is huge. Because to me, and this is what I do, it's like, if you don't have your health, you have nothing. You can't do anything.
I had gained 67 pounds, and so I've lost 40 of that since
Oh, good
then.
for you.
good for
It's
you.
definitely harder to lose at 50 than it is at 40.
Definitely is.
It's like the figuring out the Instagram algorithm. I mean, you're trying to figure out
It's like the Rubik's Cube.
It is. It is. That's
Exactly.
like the holy grail right there.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I gained weight. I was very short. I was very reactive. I wasn't doing the things outside that I enjoy. Like I like to ski and snowshoe and, walk around the lake, all those things, and wasn't doing any of that. And I think it just got to this point where you could physically look at me and I looked at myself and it was just, it was time. And I had tried the regular stuff and it just wasn't working. So again, my moment was bold and loud, and I don't recommend that, but I do recommend choosing yourself and your health, because if you don't have that, like you said, you don't have anything.
You have
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
There's no going anywhere,
So
doing
agree.
anything.
Sometimes we're doing things because we think someone expects us to, or that's a should, like I should do this, I should do that. I think that can also lead to some of the things that can burn us out, because we just start doing all these shoulds. Like I should, make sure that I'm room mom. I should make sure that I plan the best Valentine's Day ever for my husband. I should make sure I visit my parents. I mean, these are all things that kind of go, room mom's not one of the things I have to do anymore. My daughter's almost 28. But I mean, those are just a few things that I bet a lot of people just even listening can do that. Plus you have your job where you want to, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're in corporate or whether you're running your household, those are all jobs that are so important that take a lot of energy. So thinking about how much energy you have to give and what you can do versus what you should do.
Yeah. And I
Sure.
think that's true. Like, your energy level, and at what point are you no longer, productive? I hate, I'm
know.
big on like efficiency
Very
and
big on
productivity.
production and efficiency.
But like,
At the end of our day, I'm like, okay, did we do
KPI,
enough?
yeah.
and
Did we do enough?
she'll always
I
text
say,
me like, did you get enough done today?
Did you, is
did
it,
you check
it's, have
everything
you
off
done
your
it?
list?
Have we, like when we're together, we're together usually 2 days a week working, and I'll be like, okay, was this a good day for us? Did we get enough done?
What else is on your
Exactly.
list? Well, we spoke to someone a couple months ago, I think it was, and she said she doesn't
Yeah.
make a to-do list. list anymore. She makes a to be list.
Right.
Who do I want to be
Right.
today?
Today.
And then what are those things that it could be maybe 3 things that you do to
Sure.
become the person that you want to be versus like this checklist of, I'm getting there. It's slow, Leigh. It's
Very
very
slow. It's at a snail's pace slow.
Sometimes we don't focus on the most important things. We focus on all the things, and then our priorities can get out of whack, right? And you can't have everything be a number one. And I think you need to also make sure that you're on the list. And I think that's hard to do, easier said than done at certain points and points in our lives. But I think that's something that just I always was, I think, putting others first and doing for others, work and at home. And I think it just, again, I think it added to some of the challenges that I had and trying to figure things out with my health and what to
Yeah.
do. And
It's
the
just
Yeah.
stress.
added the
Yeah.
stress. I was gonna say, and the
Yeah.
stress then, going back to your health, it's like
Begets. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
stress is going
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
hurt you in
I
every
had this
possible way.
Yeah, and I had this thing that I think was also really good that I, realized and dug into over the last couple years, but I never felt like I was enough, and I was working really really hard to always be more plus, plus plus, like whatever it was, like you needed a 10, I want to be a 10 plus. You needed an A, I want to be an A plus. Like, and I realized, and this was such a big thing for me to figure out where that came from last year, was I think when my brother passed away, I was really working to fill all the space so that my parents never were sad, they never were disappointed, they never were unhappy. And they didn't ask me to do that. And I think it's just that's also where I think the people pleasing came from, was just wanting everyone to be good all the time. And I guess I'm kind of a middle child. I have an older brother and 2 younger sisters. So I'm kind of the oldest girl. And so also I think taking on some of the responsibilities there of being the example, but still, living my life and doing the things that I wanted to do. So I think that I'm enough and realizing that and kind of really soaking that up. And I'm still working on that. And I think that's just something that was important for me to realize kind of where that came from. Like, because no one had ever said it to me or said I wasn't, wonderful or X, Y, or Z. I think I just taken that on myself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you do. I think you step into what you think you need to do in that time. For
Right.
you, it was the loss of your brother.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say that, I lost my mom when I was 16 years old, and I had 2 younger siblings, and my dad was kind of
Yeah.
lost, and I took on a lot of the responsibilities of
Yeah.
running the house. Like I
So
did
hard.
carpools and I did,
You're
and I was also
child.
like a teenager, like
Teen, yeah, you're still a kid.
finishing high
Yeah.
school. And so it was just like I did the grocery shopping and I took them to where they had to go. And it's like, and you take on all the responsibilities. And if you look at how, like the job I have now and what I do, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm taking care of like everybody on the show. I'm taking care, like
Don't forget you.
exactly. So it's just, I relate to what you were saying. Like you played a role in your childhood that like carries you through to now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and obviously you probably missed out on some things too, and you didn't think about it then. You just did what you needed to do. But yeah, what a I mean, a pivotal loss, and
Yeah.
you taking on responsibility. I bet there's places where you might be pulling that string through, as an
Yeah,
adult.
definitely
And so
true.
it took me till like 52 to figure out kind of where mine was coming from. But I was like, oh, that must be it. Because like, why am I not enough? I was born enough, so I know that, and I have purpose. And I'm working, for good. So, I don't know where all that was coming from, but it was helpful for me to at least unpack it and realize kind of some of those things that were coming into my belief system, and really start pushing some of them back.
I think it's important to recognize kind of where that comes from, where that stems from. A lot of the things I think that we do, whether it's as kids or earlier in life, like you mentioned earlier, your mom had this fear of tunnels, and you kind of brought that, thinking that was your fear as well. And
Yeah.
I think there's so much of that we carry with us that were maybe like protective at the time, or they served a purpose at the time, but now they don't serve us anymore. And we're, it's hard to let go of those because they're so ingrained in who you are, and how you grew up. But I just want to talk for a quick second about this idea of, not being enough and imposter syndrome. I think that is a big thing. I think that kind of goes across all sort of disciplines and industries, no matter who you are, what type of work you do. I think that a lot of people have
100%.
right?
Yeah.
What, I guess, How could you, or what's the first step in maybe overcoming that?
Yeah. I think sitting down kind of in the belief section of the book, really going through that. And I think I am statements are a really interesting thing to do, because sometimes you might not say positive things about yourself, or sometimes maybe you're in there, I aming and it's all positive. I know when I first started doing that practice, a lot of the beginning ones weren't positive. And again, they were some of my self talk. And so I think when you realize kind of how you're speaking to yourself, or, imposter syndromes means I don't deserve to be here, or I'm not smart enough to be here, or, why was I chosen when she did so much more than me, or whatever it may be that comes into your head. But like really understanding kind of the root of where that came from. And that might not happen overnight, or even with, beginning the parts in the belief section. But I do think, you're feeling it. And I think not pushing it away, but really starting to dig into kind of where did that come from? Who owns that? Is that something that was kind of given to me, or did someone have an expectation of me that I feel I'm not meeting? I want to make sure I, make everybody happy, whatever it may be from that perspective, but just not pushing it away. And then the first step with the imposter syndromes is acknowledging it's there, but then also realizing that you are the one that's going to actually be able to kind of move through that by helping yourself understand that you do belong there. You did work hard. You worked as hard as someone else, if not more. And I think if you get that point of like, why don't I deserve this? But looking into that kind of your own beliefs about yourself, and where they've come from. So sometimes we might have someone in our life that, tells us we're not smart, or tells us we're not enough, or that we're not thin enough, or smart enough, or pretty enough, or whatever it may be. And those are all just wrong. I
Yeah.
just, sorry, like you need to realize that, I think I go back to what I said earlier, like who's in charge? Like you're in charge of your next step. You're in charge of how you talk to yourself. You're in charge of defining who you are and who you want to be. And it should not be based on someone else's expectations or some comparison trap that I think a lot of us get into as well, as just understanding that you're beautiful as you are, and you're here for a reason and a purpose. And the more aligned you can be to that purpose, the more you're going to feel like you're able to be yourself, and you're not even close to being an imposter in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't help thinking of Demi Moore's Golden Globe speech, which really was the essence of what you just said, and that's from someone who you think has everything and has it all going on, and still didn't feel like enough that she would ever deserve any kind of accolade like she was about to receive. And so it does make you think everybody is feeling that. It's like everyone walks through the world feeling that little bit of imposter syndrome.
When in doubt, be kind. Be kind to
Yeah.
yourself, be kind to others. And that may sound like, I don't know, superficial, but it really isn't. I think when we think about moving through life, we don't know what someone's gone through. I mean, that's one thing I learned when I lost my brother. Is one of the things my mom said to me that I will always remember is like, I went back to school and some of the people were just kind of really blunt about what had happened. And it made me sad. And I came home and my mom said, not everyone will know what you've gone through. You don't wear a name tag with everything that's happened to you. So just realize that, just be kind and forgive. I mean, I just remember her saying that to me, and it was just like, it's something that I've really carried through. So you never know what someone's going through, or their journey, or their story. Don't assume, and don't say you understand when you don't. So, like, I think just be there and listen is some of the boldest things you can probably do for someone. And then where you need to maybe challenge them a little bit to think differently, feel like you can, in your relationship with them, of like, well, have you thought about, or did you consider? I mean, those are nice things that you could say to just maybe get someone out of a rut, or maybe get them walking towards, their value and standing in who they are and how important they are. But yeah, we never know what someone's gone through, or what they've overcome, or what they might be battling right now.
100%.
Yeah.
I try to live by that.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I think, the phrase like holding space for someone, I think is, to me, the one of the most important things you can do. It's like, don't say you understand if you don't. You haven't lived through, you haven't
That was
walked in
one of
their
my pet
shoes.
peeves, yeah, for a while.
Yeah,
I
it's
used to
like,
get
sure.
really ticked off when people would say that.
yes, or I
Yeah.
can imagine what you're going. No, you really
Yeah.
can't, because you haven't
Yeah.
been there and you
Sure.
don't know. And I think it's, and look, and everyone goes through stuff, right? And I think until you've experienced that, and sometimes it takes time, and you're
Sure.
older. For me, it was my divorce, and that was like this pivotal
Yeah.
moment of like, oh my God, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I'm not going to be able to like move forward or go on from this. But and obviously here I am.
Here you are.
Talking about it. But I think that was the first time for me, it's kind of sad to say, that I really recognized that to be true, what you're saying to be true. It's like you have no idea. I would walk around and I would think, why is everyone so happy? Why is everyone
so happy? Why is the world still spinning?
Yeah. Don't they know? Don't they know?
Don't they know?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's so hard.
It's hard.
But I have to say, conversely, when I went through my divorce, I was so grateful that you had
That I had gone through
yours.
it. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Because she really did understand, and she really we'd already been friends, and that because I knew that she had gone through this and I was in the process of going through it, it was like definitely a kindred spirit. I mean, it's a crappy thing to have to share, but it's still shared. It's a shared
bonding
history.
moment of a true understanding of like how it feels and how you can have a good day and then have a really bad day, and I think just having your people, and what I mean by your people is people that get you, and they're not just yes people around you, but they're people that really see you as a 360-degree human being. And if you don't have those types of people in your world, then I think you need to go find a couple.
It's so
It
true.
doesn't need to be 50. It can just be one or two.
When my marriage was ending and we went to a marriage counselor, and the counselor, she was a very good marriage counselor. I mean, she didn't save, our marriage couldn't be salvaged at that point, but she saw me separately and she saw him separately. When she saw me separately, she made me write down on a whiteboard every person, and she made a circle, and she said to me, these are your people. This is your circle. This is who you're going to. You don't have to tell anyone else that this is going on, but you're relying on these like whatever 7, 8 people to like be that. And that's when I realized how important it was to have those people to rely on and to have like literally circling you.
Yeah. And when you're making bold moves like what you did, like saying, I did something that didn't work out and we tried to make it work and it's not happening, and I have to make a bold choice to leave, right? And to change. And so that in itself is a bold move. But I think also realizing that when you think about the circles of people, there'll be, I always look at it like a dartboard. So there's like the middle, the bullseye, and then outside, of that. You may move people into the bullseye, meaning the closest to you at certain points of your life, and you may move others out to the outer circles based on what you're going through or what you're experiencing or what you maybe want to try, because you may have people who totally are supporters of you, but they're going to try and talk you out of it, or they're going to, maybe rationalize you don't need to do it. When you know you want to and you need to. So I think it's important too to realize sometimes you're going to move some of the pieces of the people on your board differently than you might at certain times. And sometimes there's like the ride or die that are always going to be smack dab in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be there all the time.
Yes, that's. I hope that's me. I think that's me. Is that me?
I think so.
I think so.
I think so.
Sometimes.
Sometimes I want to kill you, but sometimes I want to throw the dart at her. But
and vice versa. I would say a lot more she wants to throw the dart at me, and a lot more she's in my bullseye. I just want to point that out.
True. That's not true.
Anyway, well, this has been great. I mean, is there any last words? If you're listening to this and you think that you're stuck and you think you have to make a bold move, what would you say is a first step to kind of make that happen for yourself?
Yeah, so I always say to begin. So just start. And that first step is usually the hardest, whether it's realization or kind of you coming to the fact that something has to change. It's a hard realization at times. Other times it's like a little nerve-wracking and those types of things of like, well, I really would like to try something different, but I'm not sure how to. It doesn't have to be 100% swing. It could be just a 0.01%. I'm going to do something differently. You want to maybe do something different within your organization, maybe start shadowing someone. have the conversation, working up to that conversation with your supervisor. If you're stuck in a relationship that you're not sure is evolving, just having the conversation or planning the date for it. So just knowing that you just need to take the first step and begin is so, so important. And start with beliefs and belief in yourself, and using that as a tool for you to take your next step and your next step after that.
Amazing.
That's such great advice.
Yeah.
I love it.
Let's just say the book again is Be Bold Today, Unleash Your Potential, Master Your Mindset, and Achieve Success. Leigh Burgess was our guest. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
on
you,
Everybody
Leigh.
Talk. We loved having you.
Thank you so much.
All right, so that was like a fantastic discussion.
So great.
Yeah. And how, it just makes you rethink. It's like it was a good summary for me of a lot of things that we've learned on this podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I think that I like how she approaches the definition as being like this sort of kind of flexible thing, and the misconceptions are like that it has to be like aggressive and and it's not. It's just living your life in a way that is like confident,
Right.
and having that belief in yourself, which is, it's not easy to do, but
No.
I think it's important. And I think that her book, which I want to really dig more into,
Right.
I didn't really quite
Yeah.
get it in time to do
No.
that. But, she has all those different steps, and to recognize, like, I'd like to know, actually, we should do this.
We should do the quiz.
the quiz, so that we know like what
Yes.
our bold persona is.
Right.
But yeah, no, she was great.
I know. Yeah, and I'm the bullseye.
You're the bullseye.
And
You're the bullseye for my dart, or you're the bullseye?
Well, sometimes for the dart. Sometimes I'm just at the center. I think
my shoulder.
I feel like
Sorry. See, I should.
that's another podcast episode.
Yeah,
on frozen shoulder.
Frozen shoulder. Did you hear that crack?
Yes, I did. Oh my God.
All right. Well, anyway.
But anyway, so we hope you learned a little bit about that. That bold is not necessarily what you think.
Yeah.
I'm
Be
Lori
bold.
Schulweiss.
And I'm Jen
exactly.
Giamo.
And this was Everybody Talks. Take
Talk
care.
to you next time. For more information about our podcast, to learn more about us, and to catch up on all of our episodes, go to our website at everybodytalkspodcast.com.
Follow us on Instagram at Shirley, at Jen Giamo, and at Everybody Talks. And if you want to watch today's episode, go to our YouTube channel at Everybody Talks Podcast.
Join the Everybody Talks community by checking out our Patreon page, where you can become an exclusive member of our wellness group and be a part of the conversation.
And don't forget, if you like what you've heard, give us a 5-star rating, write a review, and tell a friend. We're for everybody and everybody. The Everybody Talks podcast is co-created, executive produced, and hosted by us, Lori Schulweiss and Jen Giamo. Produced and edited by Station 16.
Our theme song music is written and performed by Jackie Ryle and Aaron Navisi, with additional support from our pups, Oliver, Milo, and Murray.
Talk to you next time.